Hello, and welcome to Reel Film Snobs. I'm Angela Yeager, and guess who's here with me? The one, the only, Bryan Michael.
Hello,
Welcome to the show,
everybody.
Bryan.
Yeah, it's so nice to see your face again. Not that it's been
Yes,
that long, but it has been a long time since I've seen everybody else's faces. How are the little monsters doing out there? You been taking care of everybody?
yes, have been taking care of everyone. For those who haven't watched the show in a few years, Bryan and I started Reel Film Snobs together and did the show up through COVID, and then COVID destroyed all of our lives. So that's
Yes.
that's the explanation for Bryan's absence. But Bryan is back and in a fancy studio setup that probably is not
Yes.
his own home, I
No,
will
no.
say.
I just found the nearest one I could break into, and here we are.
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
he broke in, and what brings Bryan back is, of course, Gene Hackman, one of our favorite actors,
Mm.
someone we both truly admire. And I said, when Gene Hackman passed away recently, I said, "There's no one I can do this episode with other than Bryan. We've loved his movies together. You're the first one that showed me Night Moves. I didn't even know existed."
Mm.
So we're going to do six of his films to get today because when you have 300 and something films, it's hard to just pick four. So we're going to do six, which means we have to go a little faster than usual. But these are all movies we recommend. We each picked our three favorites that we recommend you watch. So here's to Mr. Hackman, one of the greats of all time, the original GOAT. Okay, so let's start. We're going to just get it going. The Conversation, 1974, one of my favorite films of all time, period. One of Francis Ford Coppola's best films. And it stars Gene Hackman as a surveillance expert who faces a dilemma when he thinks some of his recordings are revealing a potential murder. The film co-stars Cindy Williams, John Cazale, and Harrison Ford, Terry Garr in supporting roles. But this is the Gene Hackman show. This is the film, I think, up until now. I mean, he'd already been working for a while, but Gene Hackman's unusual in Hollywood in that he didn't start his career as a young, gorgeous man of the screen. He came about as a kind of middle-aged, already balding man, an everyman, if you will. And here he plays a character that's very unlike his actual personality. In real life, apparently he
Mm.
was jovial and outgoing and liked people. This is a character who's cloistered and suspicious and dark and just worried and anxious. And the whole film has this anxious feeling about it. And it's interesting because it was actually filmed before a lot of the Watergate stuff, but because the timing, because it came out just as it was happening, everyone thought Coppola's a genius. He predicted all the Watergate stuff. And he's like, no, I didn't. He was actually influenced by Antonioni's um, film Blowout, for
Mhm.
interestingly enough, and thought, what if we did something like that with audio? He had the idea before De Palma. So one of the things that Hackman does here is manage to make a character who's not necessarily likable, but you're tied in with this guy. You're really worried.
Yeah.
What's going to happen? The anxiety of this film is just amazing.
It's really interesting because at this point in time, he already has two classics under his belt. He'd been working for a really long time, and he hits Coppola right in the sweet spot, right between Godfather 1 and 2, where Coppola is right at the height of his powers. Makes this little tiny movie. People had forgotten about this film. It was nominated for Best Picture. Gene Hackman, yeah, completely carries this movie in absolute kind of, it's like one of the slowest boils you'll ever see,
Hmm.
out of a watch. He holds everything internally and very, very close to the chest. There could easily be with Gene Hackman, there's George C. Scott and there's Robert Duvall and him. They are actors who don't rely on explosiveness. Certainly they have roles where they do yell or they do make big speeches, but a lot of times you can always see the wheels turning. Their characters are always thoughtful. They're always thinking. They're either a step
Hmm.
ahead or they're a step behind. They're trying to work on something. And here's a character. He is not perfect. We don't know a lot about his past. They talk about, there's conversations about different things that have happened in his life. He's seeing this thing. We think it's one thing. It may end up being something else. He gets further and further into this, and it's just absolutely incredible to watch. And he really, really like carries this entire film, and you have to rely on that. And with Coppola being a a great director for actors, he really lets just Gene Hackman do his thing, and he's so good. And when there is somewhat of an explosion towards the end of this movie, not giving things away, and someone's sitting in a lone room, and there's some music playing, and perhaps an instrument. Um, it's just one of those things where there's so many characters he plays where he comes onto the screen and it goes off the screen, and you just imagine that character continuing on. And in this movie is the
Mhm.
exact same thing. It's like, well, yeah, this thing has happened. He couldn't figure it out, and now his life continues, and you wonder where he's at. And we'll have the same thing within the movie that I'm going to be talking about in a little bit. But I love that about Hackman. He carries everything. You can see him thinking when people are talking to him. He's listening. He's also thinking, and he's just trying to get
Mhm.
ahead of this. And such a great movie. And yeah, there's so many twists and turns, and you think it's one way, and it's going to do another. You're always going to be surprised by this film. Every time you watch it, you see something, you find something new, you see something new. It's a great film.
And I think we tried to pick movies from every decade. The 70s was one of
Yeah.
his strong decades. We could have
Mhm.
easily picked five movies from just the 70s that are
Yeah.
great.
Oh,
I mean,
easy.
easily,
Yeah.
but we didn't. So let's get to your next one because I'm excited to talk about this one.
Yeah, so
Speaking of the 70s.
this is Night Moves, and this is by Arthur Penn, and he plays a private dick. He's a private investigator that's trying to find a girl. He's hired by a Hollywood actress to find her daughter. And you again, this is another movie where you think it's one way, it's going to be one thing, and it ends up being something else. This is one of those movies that if you have a really anal attentive friend like Scott Hosner, that we are friends with, when the movie doesn't make sense, this is like The Big Sleep, where it's an amazing film, but the pieces don't fit together quite at the end, and that drives him crazy. He's like, "That's not a great movie if the plot doesn't work." I'm like, I don't care. By the end of this movie, you're like, oh, I think it's this way, but then what you do, but you think about it, like that doesn't make any sense, but it doesn't matter because it's all about the ride. And again, the ending scene in this movie where there's
Oh,
a
great.
circular motion. Again, yeah, I mean, Angela,
One of the
it's
great
haunting.
endings. One of the
It's
great endings. I just
absolutely
rewatched it
haunting. Yeah.
and it blew me away even more than the first time I ever watched this. This is one of your all-time favorites, and you showed it to me. And this is a freaking dark movie. It almost makes
Yeah.
I won't say it makes the conversation look like a comedy because that's not true, but it's very dark. It's just as dark, if
Yeah.
not darker than. And it's got some humor. It's got
Yeah.
great lines. There's a great line
Mhm.
where Hackman is sitting upstairs watching football on a crappy TV, and his wife comes in and is like, well, who's winning? She's just trying to make conversations because things are very strained in their marriage. And he says, no one, just one team is losing slower than the other team. And there's just like lines like that throughout this movie.
Yeah.
It's fantastic dialogue. Hackman, it's another difficult character because he's this
Mhm.
private dick, as you mentioned, who is taking like mostly divorce cases. He doesn't take glamorous cases. This is not Sam Spade or Philip Marlowe. This is not
Yeah.
big, and the case is really not the point of the movie. It's actually a character piece. It's about his character realizing that he has kind of let his life go and that he focused on all these things that weren't important. And that's really, I think, where we're stuck at the end. And that's why, to your reference about the things not fitting together, that's sort of the point, is that he's been kind of chasing his own tail.
What's amazing about Gene Hackman, he's got this twinkle in his eye. He has the most wonderful grandpa kind of smile, even as a younger man. But he's also got that where he would stab you in the chest and watch the lights go out in your eyes as he did it. There's
Uh,
something that's very menacing and dangerous and very scary. Again, he doesn't explode. It reminds me of Ali Fear the Soul by Fassbender, name drop, where he confronts the man that's having an affair with his wife. Now, in a movie today, he'd go and he'd rough him up and he'd beat him up. He has a conversation, a very tense conversation with this guy. And you can see he wants to explode, but he holds it together and he smiles and he laughs, and it's terrifying. Has the same type of conversation with his wife. And it's a very realistic conversation without anybody,
yeah.
there's yelling, of course, but there's no, it doesn't do a Hollywood, dramatization. And it's a real honest conversation. And again, he's laughing it off because he's so mad that he knows he can't act out physically, though he kind of wants to. He's an ex-football player. There's some great lines in this movie as well. As my favorite is when they're looking at a young oh God, I forgot to remember the actress, but he's like, oh, the guy looks at her lustfully and says, oh, there ought to be a law because she's underage.
Melanie Griffith. It's
Melanie
A
Griffith.
very young Melanie
Yes.
Griffith. Yeah,
And
really shockingly young.
Gene Hackman turns to him and just kind of laughs and goes, there is a
Yes,
law,
there is a law. Yeah.
And they had
She's a minor. She's 15, right?
they have the conversation about, where were you in JFK shot? I mean, there's really great little moments, and it's a quintessential 70s film. And Hackman just again carries this. He's not a great guy. He's not a perfect guy, but he's interesting and he holds our attention. And that's a lot to do with Hackman. And you just have to absolutely love his performance. And I already mentioned the joyful performance that George C. Scott always talks about. Is there joy in the performance? He always seems to have that, and he kind of just relishes it. And even though you may not like him, you can't help but just follow. And you kind of you want the guy to win because we're spending so much time with him. He's the main character.
Hmm.
He's our protagonist. But yeah, it's oh god, it's a great movie. I
Great
love this
movie.
movie. It's coming out on Criterion end of this month.
I'm
When
so
it's coming
glad
out?
because it's hard to
Yeah,
find. It's actually hard to
very.
find on streaming. So it's on demand mostly right now. So
Oh,
thank God for the because
good.
I'm going to definitely get it when it comes out on Criterion. So
Yeah.
and then we'll go to 1980. Yeah, you've got
So
a good one here.
so I picked Superman 2, not Superman 1, which was really interesting because when they talk about the Superman movies, they always talk about there's an unknown Christopher Reeve, and of course they played Brando $1 million. And I'm like, and Gene Hackman was a big, huge star at the time, guys. That's one of the reasons why a lot of people went to the movies, also because of Superman. But there's also Gene Hackman, and the reason I picked the second one is because this is he plays Lex Luthor quite devilish, as I said, with a twinkle in his eye, and it's a great comedic performance. The way he says Mrs. Tessbacher is always really funny. But in the second one, you have Terrence Stamp is one of the all-time great performances as Zod, and he is playing the comic book character as you would, completely over the top. So there's three new Kryptonians that come to Earth, and Superman's got to fight them, and that's
Yeah.
pretty much the plot. And you have Lex Luthor right in between the Boy Scout and these three evil people. And Hackman plays Lex Luthor as you would expect, as this corporate minded genius, so to speak, evil genius, who plays, both sides, trying to go back and forth. And you see him trying to, work with the bad guys, and then like, we'll just kill him. And he's like, no, 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 wait, wait, I have Superman's address. And he's constantly trying to think ahead of them. And
Yeah.
he's, I just want a little island, Australia. It's always about land with Lex Luthor in these movies, which really cracks me up. But again, there's a devilish charm. You can't help but like Lex Luthor. You can't help but, even though he, stabs them in the back, or he's double crossing and he's getting
Yeah.
double crossed, you can't help but really like him. And he's so good. And he could have played this way over the top. He could have just, cashed the check, but instead he plays this really wonderful performance that's so damn funny for a great dramatic actor.
Oh, I know. And the thing is, like, people see the newer Superman movies. I think one of the reasons they have failed
Mm,
so horribly is a lot of it is the casting.
yeah,
Because these early ones, these ones with Christopher Reeve, not only did you have Christopher Reeve, who I think most people will think is
quintessential.
just quintessential Superman, but the side characters, like, what is one of the later ones they cast Jesse Eisenberg as Lex Luthor? I mean, I like Jesse Eisenberg. He's a good actor and he's a better writer, but come on, Gene
No pop.
Hackman.
Yeah,
I mean, yeah, Gene Hackman just chose this role. And like you said, another bad guy, Terrence Stamp. I mean, Superman 2 is, in my opinion, the best of the Superman movies because it doesn't waste all the first one. It's like, oh, we got to set it up. Yeah, like, oh, his origins, all that stuff. Here we just get right into the action. And this is a great comedic performance and also his ability to play villains, which is really fun. So,
yeah, yeah,
yes.
and he shares the screen with Ned Beatty. That's another thing that Gene Hackman does too. He doesn't dominate a scene, even though he is, the main character in some of these films. But he also shares the screen with a lot of actors, and I think a lot
Yes.
of actors. That's why he's so popular. A lot of actors loved working with him. If you knew your lines and you knew what you were doing, we'll get to that a little bit later.
Okay.
Oh, so then my next movie is Mississippi Burning. Now we're going into the 80s. We try to span things out. You were smart about that. And this was directed by Alan Parker. This was two FBI agents of completely different mindsets, shall we say, they're sent to Mississippi to try to find three civil rights workers that had disappeared. And here you have him paired, and I hadn't thought about this perfectly, with Willem Dafoe. Here's another actor who now Willem
Terrific
Dafoe is
actor, also. Yeah.
Willem Dafoe is not afraid to change his face, have a hunchback, have fangs, whatever it is that he can do, but he's never bad. He might be a little over top in Speed too, but that's a soft spot. He maybe bad movies, but he's always good. He's always good. So is Gene Hackman as well. So to have these two going back and forth is absolutely fantastic. So Willem Dafoe is by the books and he's trying to find this, and this isn't necessarily going to work until they hand it over to Gene Hackman. He's like, we're going to do it the old school way. And they kind of go outside the lines of the law. It doesn't age really well, but it is thoroughly entertaining to watch any white supremacists get their dues. And Gene Hackman, there's a great scene where they're trying to speak to the sheriff, and he's tears down the deputy that's holding back. I can't use the language that he uses here, but he gives him a nice threatening with a smile on his face and a twinkle in his eye again. It's so menacing and so terrifying. And then you
Hmm.
really get to see what he's wanting to do, and it's time to bust some skulls in order to get some justice. It's a great juxtaposition performance. And and as much as we're talking about Gene Hackman here, Willem Dafoe is so good in this one too. So it was a real delight. And then Frances McDormand is also in it, another great actress. A little
Yes.
before she really found her footing, but she's still very good in this movie. And he, of course, gives both of them lots of breathing room to be able to do what they should be able to do.
Yeah, I rewatched this because I have to admit I hadn't seen it probably since I saw it in the theaters. And at the time when it came out in '88, actually I didn't see it in the theater because I was too young, but I think my parents
Yeah.
and I we rented it on video
Mm-hmm.
and I loved it then. It hasn't aged well in some ways because I mean there's been a lot of complaints about there's no black protagonist. It's a civil rights movie with no major black characters. And so it's all the
Yeah.
two, white
White
saviors.
saviors. Yeah.
And I definitely see that perspective. However,
Mm-hmm.
it's Gene Hackman and Willem Dafoe, and it's basically we
So
get to watch
good.
them act against each other for 2 hours,
Yeah.
and it is also it shows the flawed their what they do actually tears the town up and does end up hurt both of them in a way, but especially Willem Dafoe's character because he brings in all these FBI guys. It hurts the black folks in the town, so they
Yeah.
show that despite being well-meaning, because they're so unaware of the culture in a way, particularly the Willem Dafoe character, because he keeps calling him Harvard boy, right? His by the book
Yeah.
way from the North. And Gene Hackman's character is a guy who's played, which is kind of ironic because he isn't from the South, but he's believable. He plays a guy who is originally from the South, and his father was a racist. And he personalizes this. He tells this great
Yeah.
story to Willem Dafoe about his father and his father's racism. And he has this great line about how his father was really the real thing his father should have been angry about was being poor, but instead he scapegoated black people. And I just think it's so intelligent for 1988 because we realize that's a lot of the
Yeah.
issues, with white poverty in the South. But Gene Hackman, the way he tells that story, it's just a beautiful moment in the movie. And like you said, they're playing the opposite types of characters. And when Willem Dafoe characters finally realizes that his by the book way isn't getting anything done in the dirty
Yeah.
South, and they're going to have to go dirty, they do. And
Yeah.
in some cases, that's very satisfying to watch them get these Klan members and serve them justice. But it's also
Yeah.
like, okay, is this right though? Violence begets violence, right? So not a perfect movie, but a great performance by Hackman and Defoe. I wish they'd acted together more often because they're both so good
The
together.
thing that I'll mention though, as we talk about Gene Hackman's career, he never went on a heater in terms of when you think of like Tom Hanks in the 90s, where it was just like, oh my God, oh wow, you had to go see it. It was a must see. You got to go see this. Or Russell Crowe in the early aughts, where it was just like, oh yeah, this actor makes this movie. Da, da, da. You watch some of the movies, like, after French Connection, he made a movie, like 2 or 3 movies. I was like, what? I never even heard of these. And so I don't know if it was his manager or if it was him, but he did end up working with some great directors that were, great movies that we're talking about today. But there's a lot of other ones that were like, I never even heard of this movie. I never saw this movie. There's one he did with Barbara Streisand that I have on VHS. I never got to watch. So it's really interesting in terms of his career. Some of the movies I'm sure are not going to be very good. They got really poor marks, but I still want to see him in those films. That was the only thing I noticed about his career was it was just, yeah, he worked with some really cool directors. The director of The New Land, that double feature. Yeah, it's too bad that he just didn't have that consistency of just really
He's
fine
really
roles.
he's like a character actor who became a movie
Yeah.
star, is what I
Oh,
think you're saying.
totally.
Because he did a lot. And unfortunately, towards the end of his career, and I think that's one of the reasons he stopped acting, the roles were getting pretty bad. And so that's why,
Yeah.
he started having to do, crappy movies, Welcome to Mooseport with Ray Romano. And he probably thought, I don't want to do this
I like
anymore.
that movie, Hush. I
Oh,
remember liking
sorry.
that movie.
Okay, well,
But
that was his last movie.
well,
And so it's not,
yeah.
it's no night moves. We can agree on
Yeah,
that,
and
I
also
think.
no,
So.
he didn't do like the Robert Duvall thing where you're taking movies and small parts and Tom Cruise movies or Michael Bay movies. The Francis McDormand, a lot of them have done that. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. I don't believe he did anything like that. So that's interesting too. But yeah, it's too bad that he didn't have just a. When you string his great movies together, they're amazing, but there's a lot of valleys in between those. So
Yeah.
that'll be interesting
Just very
to look.
prolific. Like I said, on
Yeah,
Letterboxd, it lists 350 entries, which not all of those, of course, are feature films,
yeah.
but he did a lot of movies.
There
So,
might be some
uh,
gem performances in there that we don't know of too.
Well,
So
the
that'd be
movie
fun.
actually, one of his first Oscar win was for a movie, something my father danced. I've never
I
seen
Never
it.
Sang for My Father is an
I never sang for my
amazing
father.
movie.
Oh, it is. It
Oh,
is. We
it's
didn't.
so
I've never seen
good.
it. Yeah.
Oh, it's
So
so good.
plays a guy who's got father issues, and so
Yeah,
which is also a theme in some of his movies. Mississippi Burning, he talks about his father a
yeah,
lot. So very interesting.
yeah,
Um, in the 90s, as we go into the 90s, he started to work with Clint Eastwood a lot. He made, I think, three movies with Eastwood in the
yeah,
90s. And the best one, which is the one we're going to talk about, but they're all pretty good and they're all worth
yeah,
watching, I would say,
totally.
is 1992 Unforgiven, a masterpiece. And I actually will admit this is one that because of when I was younger, I didn't like Westerns as much as I do now. And thanks to you, I love them now. This is one that has aged really well because I just rewatched it on my friend's 4K DVD disc, and man, did it look good on 4K. And it stars Eastwood as William Money, an aging outlaw and killer who takes on another job because he needs the money to take care of his kids. He's a widower. He pairs up with Morgan Freeman, his best buddy, and they go to this town, this town that is led by the sheriff, who's played by Gene Hackman, who ended up winning an Oscar for Best Supporting Actor. It's a supporting role, but man, is Hackman is this movie? It would
So
not be the movie it was without Hackman. He plays Little Bill. And here's the thing that I didn't remember after rewatching the movie is I remember when I saw this movie in the 90s thinking Hackman's character was just a villain, an outright villain. When you rewatch it, you realize, okay, Hackman's character is a sheriff whose job is to keep
mhm.
law and order in the town. The town that he is overseeing doesn't allow guns. He just doesn't want violence in the town. Now, he uses violence very horribly, but
Yes,
he's a violent person when he has to be, but he doesn't really want to deal with that. He wants to build his house. There's kind of an ongoing joke. The movie has a lot of humor.
yeah,
He's trying to build a house. It's leaky as heck. His guys who work for him, his deputies, are like, this guy, he's a great sheriff, but man, he can't. There isn't a square corner on any part of that house. Like, um, and so it's a comedic performance in parts, and he's scary for the reasons you've already brought up. Like he's actually very calm when he's interrogating the bad guys or the guys he thinks
yeah.
are the bad guys that have come into his town. He's like very calm, and he says, "I'm going to ask you a question," and it's scary because he's calm. If he just started screaming at them, I feel like
Oh,
it wouldn't be as menacing. But his character,
yeah.
Little Bill, is he any more of a bad guy than Eastwood's character, who in his past, when he was an outlaw, killed innocent women and children? I mean,
Oh,
these are
yeah.
the moral questions that Eastwood is doing here. I think it's really one of Eastwood's best films, easily, because it's a violent movie that is about anti-violence. It's saying,
Yeah.
violence begets violence, and these moral quandaries of, well, who's really the bad guy here? Is Eastwood the bad guy? Is Hackman the bad guy? I mean, he's bad because he beats up, Morgan Freeman and does horrible things to him. But it's also like these were guys that came into his town to kill people on
Yeah.
a, bounty.
Yeah, when you juxtapose it with, you're feeling lucky, punk. Well, do you? With, funny thing about killing a man, you'll take away everything he's done and everything he will do, which I always think is really interesting. This is Clint Eastwood getting his friends together and, hey, let's put on a play, let's do on a show. It works great with Outlaw Josie Wales. They're great bookends to his cowboy movies that he made, cowboy westerns. And Gene Hackman, yeah, here is the devilish delight in just being smarter than everyone, being a step ahead of everyone, having the law on his side. When he, beats the living tar out of Richard Harris there, I mean, he just does it with just in front of everybody, doesn't hide anything back. And he's terrifying, but yet he can sit there and say the duck of what was it, the duck of death, and they're like
The
the
duck
Duke,
of
and
death.
he's
He
like,
kept reading.
yeah,
The
the duck
duck.
of
He
death,
kept saying he's undermining. He knows he
yeah,
how to read.
yeah,
He's messing with them.
yeah,
And he's like
so
talking to the
playful,
writer. He's playful, and
yeah,
he does care about his house. He just wants to like live a peaceful life. Like he doesn't
yeah.
he's the sheriff, but it's because he wants to keep peace. He's not just like looking for excuses to kill people. But if people are going to come into his town and raise hell, well, he's going to
you
do,
know, as a
so
as an ex-gunfighter, he knows, and they even talk about that. They're like, well, it's just luck. Some of it's just luck. I knew that guy was going to go first, then the other ones I just kind of got lucky with. He knows that there's a percentage of, that he's going to win. There's a percentage he's going to lose, and when you lose one, that's it. And so,
yeah.
yeah, he just kind of plays like the man that may or may not have tomorrow, and he's kind of seen it all a little bit too, and he's just taking guns at everyone's hands. That's going to prevent things. And so it's interesting. I never thought about the way that you said it, that yeah, he is he could also be seen as the good guy trying to keep the peace and such. But Yeah, it's an amazing
His
performance.
final line is, I don't deserve this. I just wanted to build my house.
Yeah, yeah,
So, I mean, I think that said something to me. I
yeah,
hadn't really thought about it before, and I didn't see him that way because he does
yeah.
horrible things and he tortures people. But they also allude to the fact that Eastwood's character had also done horrible things in his past.
Yeah,
So great movie. We didn't even
yeah,
get into the cinematography, which is gorgeous and very influenced by John Ford's The Searchers, as all
yeah.
films are, I think, all westerns especially.
Name
But
drop.
yes, but great, great film. So okay, we'll move on to our last film. One of my favorite, actually probably my favorite Wes Anderson movie, which says something because he's made a lot of films since then, and most of them haven't been very good in my opinion. The Royal Tenenbaums for
Yeah.
2001. This is Wes Anderson at his best, I think. You know, he had three great films, in my opinion: Bottle Rocket, Rushmore, and
Mhm.
this one.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons this film is so great is because of Gene Hackman's performance. He plays the lead, Royal Tenenbaum, who is the patriarch of a family that has splintered, and that he was not around for the kids when they were young, and he tries to ingratiate himself in their lives now
Mhm.
and finds a lot of resistance and finds he's come back to his family, and lo and behold, because didn't have their father in their lives all their whole lives, that they are fractured and just totally at sea. They're all lost. He tries to get back with Angelica Houston, who he has great chemistry with in this film. Um,
Always.
and Royal, this is a great comedic performance. There are some scenes in this movie, again with the devilishness. This guy is kind of a bad guy. Like he lies to his kid, he lies to his wife to get back to them. He does horrible
It
things all the
does.
time, and you root for him throughout the
Yeah,
entire movie. You want him to get
yeah.
back with his family because he's trying so hard, despite the fact he's kind of a big jerk. So,
Yeah, no, again, this deals with now he's grown into the grandpa energy with the twinkle in his eye, and you can't help but like him. There's a great scene, it's the montage with me and Julio down by the schoolyard where he's doing naughty things with the grandkids, I think is what it is.
yeah,
And
they're
they're
going
running
where he's
around
showing
and
his kids how to
how
have
to
fun because they've been
steal.
raised by the uptight dad played by Ben Stiller. So
Yes.
he's like, "Let me show you how to have real fun." And so
Yeah, yeah.
they hitch a ride and they're throwing things at other
And it
cars
just
and
feels like,
yeah.
okay, so we don't know Gene Hackman, but that just feels like something he would actually done in real life. As
Hmm.
most of the things he does in this movies are just kind of like, yeah, I could see where he'd kill a man with his bare hands. Sure, yeah, right. Or teach his kids, grandkids how to steal. It's so authentic. It never feels like a performance. It always just comes in. He just comes in ready made, and you kind of know that character already. He's kind of the staple in this movie. I imagine even for the actors looking to Gene Hackman, they all kind of look up to him in a way, even though he's the patriarch of the family. They do it as well. But yet you can't. Yeah, he's such a jerk, but you can't help but just like him because he plays it well. And that kind of comedy, by the way, that's not really easy. You're acting across from Ben Stiller, who knows comedy backwards and forwards and can be
Right.
silly and goofy, and
And
he's
he's
got a
very funny in this.
and
And
he's
I wanted
really
to do this one
good.
because he's not as known for his comedic
Yep.
performances. He did some, he did The Birdcage. He did do some comedies. You see it with Lex Luthor, though, that he has the ability to do that. And
Yes.
here he gets to do it in a lead performance.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
and
and he
I
looks
personally love
great.
this movie.
I love
Yeah,
the
and he
way he
looks,
looks in this movie. I love the way they dress everybody in this movie. This is when Wes Anderson was quirky, and it felt like an after effect. And the rest of them just feel like they're trying to be quirky. This one is his vision. It just happens to be kind of quirky, and it kind of bounces
mhm.
along. The casting is really good. It's an odd, funny. I remember being in the theater and seeing this one, and the audience not laughing because a lot of them just didn't understand exactly what they thought was a Ben Stiller movie, so they were just kind of like they didn't get it.
Mm.
And it's a lot of odd. You can watch it by yourself, certainly, but if you watch it with friends, it certainly will hold together a lot better. But Gene Hackman was, just absolute one of a kind. I really loved his performances. Like I said, he never put a bad performance.
You never did. Not that we saw. Of
Not
course,
that
we
we
haven't
saw.
seen
Yeah.
all 300 of his films, I suppose. But
Oof.
this was six great films. There are more out there. We encourage people to check out his
Yeah.
filmography and see one of the great actors of his generation, and there will never be another one like him. So,
Yeah. Yeah. The quick
just like
eye
there will be
dead.
never another one like you, Brian. You're also a one of a
Thank
kind.
you.
Okay, so we have to wrap it up. This has been Real Film Snobs. Go to our YouTube page, subscribe. Thank you, Brian, for being on. As always, have a great day and great movies.